Sometimes you read something in scripture and it's like an anchor dropping in your soul. It's a truth so solid, so foundational, it can hold you steady no matter what. Today, we're going to dive into one of those passages, the beginning of Romans chapter 11.
And that leads to this huge question, one that really gets to the heart of what it means to have faith. We see promises get broken all the time, right? So, what about God? When his own people mess up, when they wander off, does his covenant have a loophole? Is there an expiration date? This is the very thing the Apostle Paul is about to take on.
So, how does the Bible answer this massive question? Well, you might expect some big, abstract theological argument, but that's not where Paul starts at all. He starts with the person. He starts with himself. I mean, he just lays it right out there. He asks the question, and bam, he gives an immediate, emphatic answer, by no means. And what's his first piece of evidence? His own life. It's like he's saying, look at me. My very existence as a follower of the Messiah, I'm exhibit A that God has not abandoned his people.
And you've got to get this distinction, it's so important. Paul isn't saying he's some rare exception to a new rule of rejection. No. He's saying he is living, breathing proof that the original rule, God's faithfulness, still stands. He is the verification of the promise, walking around in flesh and blood.
And that really drives home this incredible point. God's covenant is not a democracy. Its truth isn't decided by a popular vote. Even if there's only one person left standing in faith, that alone is enough to prove that God has not broken his promise. Grace doesn't need a majority to be true.
Okay, so Paul himself is exhibit A. He's the living proof. But what's the theological bedrock behind that proof? Well, he anchors his whole argument in a single, incredibly powerful word, a word that speaks to God's binding covenant promise.
And there it is, that one word, foreknew. This isn't some casual, throwaway term. It carries the entire weight of God's faithfulness on its shoulders.
Now, when we hear a word like foreknow, we might think of, just seeing something before it happens. But in the Bible, it's so much deeper than that. It's an active, relational word. It means God took the initiative. He chose to set his love on his people first. He bound himself to them in a promise.
And think about what that means. It's just profound. Because God's commitment came first, before any of our responses, good or bad. It simply can't be undone by our failures. The foundation of the whole thing isn't our performance. It's his unbreakable character. This idea that God's promises are secure, well, it leads us to another huge theme in Scripture, that God is almost always doing more than we can see. And to prove his point, Paul reaches way back into Israel's history, to a moment of total despair.
I mean, you can just feel the ache in the prophet Elijah's voice here. He looks all around him, he sees nothing but unfaithfulness, and he comes to this heartbreaking conclusion: I am the only one left. It is a cry of absolute theological loneliness. And then God's response comes, and it just completely shatters Elijah's perception of reality. What looked like one single person to Elijah was in God's economy, 7,000. The gap between what we see on the surface and what God is really doing, well, it can be massive.
And get this, the most powerful part isn't even the number 7,000, it's the grammar. God doesn't say, hey, good for them, 7,000 people managed to stay faithful. No, he says, I have kept for myself. Faithfulness, in the end, isn't something we maintain on our own. It's always, always divinely preserved.
Okay, so that's the remnant. But what about everyone else? What about those who don't believe? Paul talks about their hearts being hardened, but this isn't some random, arbitrary act from God. Think of it like a choice, a path. A person consistently, stubbornly chooses to walk away from God. After a while, God simply confirms them in the direction they've already chosen. It's a sobering consequence, for sure, but it's a consequence of human choice.
So it all comes back to this group, this remnant that God keeps. Who are they really? And this is where we find the unspoken hero of the whole chapter. Because even though his name isn't in every verse, Jesus is the absolute center of this entire passage. Because this special group, this preserved remnant, isn't defined by what you might think. It's not about their ethnicity. It's not about how well they keep the law. It's not about their historical privileges. The one thing, the only thing that defines the remnant God keeps is their union with the Messiah, Jesus.
And that, right there, is the heart of it all. The whole future of God's covenant people, the fulfillment of every single promise he ever made, it is all gathered up and guaranteed in the person of Jesus Christ. He is the one true, faithful Israelite, and all who are faithful find their life in him.
Okay, so let's bring this all home. What does this mean for us, right here, right now? What do we take away from all this? Well, it leaves us with a kind of hope that's deep and stable and doesn't depend on what our eyes can see.
The comfort we can hold on to from Romans 11 is just immense. It means that even when unbelief looks like it's winning the day, grace is still at work. When all of history looks like one long story of human failure, God is quietly, behind the scenes, keeping his people and keeping his promises. His faithfulness might be hidden sometimes, but it is never, ever absent.
You know, what this really leaves us with is a call to humility, right? A call to be patient. We have to resist that temptation to look at the world and declare that we know how the story ends, because God's story is never finished where we think it is. In the end, God does not abandon his people. He doesn't panic. He doesn't give up on his promises. He preserves. He keeps. He remembers. And Jesus Christ stands right at the center of that remembering, the living, breathing promise that God is and always will be faithful to his people.